Taking statins after 65. What your grandmother cooked every Sunday morning. Instead, you wake up on a Tuesday morning, you swing your legs off the bed, and before your feet even hit the floor, you already feel it. That heaviness in your calves. That dull ache in your shoulders that wasn't there 5 years ago. You shuffle to the bathroom, you open the medicine cabinet, and there it is, that little white pill staring back at you. Atorvastatin. Or maybe it's rosuvastatin. Doesn't matter which one. Your doctor put you on it because your cholesterol numbers came back high, and he told you this was the responsible thing to do, and maybe it is. I'm not here to tell you to stop taking anything, but I am here to tell you something your doctor probably didn't have time to explain in that 12-minute appointment. Because here's the thing most people over 65 never hear. Cholesterol isn't the villain your lab report makes it look like. It's a messenger. And when you shoot the messenger without reading the message, you miss the real story. The real story is inflammation, it's oxidation, it's a liver that's been overworked for decades and a gut lining that's been quietly deteriorating since you stopped eating the way your grandmother cooked. My name is Margaret. I'm a health researcher, not a doctor, and I don't prescribe anything to anyone. What I do is spend my days buried in studies, clinical data, and old cookbooks, trying to understand why the generation that grew up on Sunday morning breakfasts and garden vegetables lived into their 90s with clear arteries, while we, with all our modern medicine, are popping pills by 60 and still getting sicker. And what I keep coming back to, over and over again, is the kitchen. Not the laboratory, not the pharmacy. The kitchen. That warm room where your grandmother stood over the stove every Sunday morning with a cast iron skillet in one hand and a wooden spoon in the other, cooking things that smelled so good the whole house felt like a hug. She wasn't reading medical journals. She was doing what her mother taught her, and her mother before that. And those women, without knowing a single word of biochemistry, were building cardiovascular protection into every meal. What I've found has changed the way I eat and the way I think about heart health. And today, I'm going to share it all with you. Before we go any further, do me a favor. If you've been on a statin for more than a year, drop a comment below and tell me one thing. Has anyone ever explained to you why your cholesterol went up in the first place? Not just that it's high, but why? I read every single comment and I want to know. And while you're down there, hit that subscribe button because what we talk about on this channel is the stuff that falls between the cracks of your regular doctor visit. Now let me explain something most people get completely wrong about cholesterol. When your doctor says your LDL is too high, what he's really saying is that there are too many little transport vehicles carrying cholesterol through your bloodstream. But LDL cholesterol isn't inherently dangerous. It only becomes a problem when it gets oxidized. Think of it like this. Imagine LDL particles are delivery trucks driving down a highway, which is your artery. When the highway is smooth, those trucks drive through, make their deliveries, and leave. No problem. But when the road is full of potholes, and those potholes are inflammation, the trucks crash. They get stuck in the arterial wall. They oxidize, they rust. Your immune system sees them as invaders and sends white blood cells to attack, which creates plaque. So the real question isn't how many trucks are on the road. The real question is, why is the road full of potholes? And that's where your grandmother's kitchen comes in. Because everything she cooked on Sunday morning was quietly smoothing the road, putting out the fire before it started. She just didn't know the science behind it. Now I want to take you through the foods that your grandmother's generation relied on, the ones that modern research is now confirming were doing exactly what we're spending billions on pharmaceuticals to replicate. The first food is oats, but not the instant kind in a paper packet with artificial maple flavoring. I'm talking about whole steel-cut oats, the kind your grandmother simmered on the stove for 40 minutes while the house filled with that warm, thick, almost nutty aroma, the kind that stuck to the wooden spoon and landed in your bowl heavy and creamy. In Appalachian families and across the Midwest, oats were the backbone of breakfast, cheap, filling, and they kept you going until supper. Here's what nobody knew back then. Oats contain a soluble fiber called beta-glucan. When it hits your stomach, it forms a thick gel that traps bile acids made from cholesterol in your liver. Normally, those bile acids get reabsorbed and recycled. But when beta-glucan traps them, your body pulls cholesterol out of your blood to make new ones. Research has consistently shown that 3 grams of beta-glucan per day, about 1.5 cups of cooked steel-cut oats, can reduce LDL cholesterol by 5 to 10%. No muscle pain, no brain fog, no liver enzyme spikes. Get a bag of steel-cut oats, cook a large batch on Sunday for the week, and every morning heat up a serving topped with cinnamon and a handful of walnuts. Eat it before anything else. The second food is something most doctors today would tell you to avoid, and that's eggs. Whole eggs, with the yolk. You've been told for 40 years that egg yolks clog your arteries. That idea came from a deeply flawed study in the 1960s funded by the sugar industry. Your grandmother didn't know about that study. She just knew Sunday breakfast wasn't Sunday breakfast without eggs fried in real butter, the edges crispy, the yolk still running. And she was right. The yolk contains choline, which your liver needs to process fat and prevent fatty liver disease, one of the hidden drivers of high cholesterol. It contains vitamin D, lutein, zeaxanthin, and phospholipids that help your body manage cholesterol transport. A major meta-analysis found that eating up to 3 whole eggs per day had no significant effect on heart disease risk, and in some cases improved the ratio of large, fluffy LDL particles to small, dense ones, which are the dangerous kind. Eat 2 to 3 whole eggs every morning, cooked in extra virgin olive oil or grass-fed butter, paired with leafy greens. The third food is one that my own grandmother made every single Sunday without fail, and that's bone broth, real bone broth. Not the stuff in a carton at the grocery store, which is mostly flavored water with some gelatin powder and way too much sodium. I'm talking about the broth that came from simmering beef marrow bones, or a whole chicken carcass for 12 to 24 hours. The kind where the pot sat on the back of the stove all day Saturday, and you'd walk into the kitchen and that deep, rich, golden smell hit you before you even turned the corner. By Sunday morning, the surface of that pot had little circles of fat floating on it, and the broth itself was thick and golden like liquid amber. When you put it in the refrigerator, it turned to jelly, a solid, wiggly, beautiful jelly. That jelly is gelatin, which is cooked collagen. Your arteries are made of collagen, and as you age, that collagen breaks down, making your arterial walls stiff and brittle. This arterial stiffness is one of the strongest predictors of heart attack and stroke. When you consume collagen through bone broth, you provide your body with glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline, the building blocks for arterial repair. Glycine, in particular, reduces C-reactive protein, a direct marker of the inflammation that causes plaque. Get 4 to 5 pounds of beef marrow bones from your butcher. Roast them at 400 degrees for 30 minutes, then put them in a slow cooker with water, 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, a quartered onion, and peppercorns. Simmer for at least 18 hours. Drink 1 cup every morning with a pinch of sea salt. Now pay attention to number 4, because this is one of the most powerful foods on this entire list. Sardines. Those little silver fish your grandfather kept in tins in the pantry, stacked 3 or 4 cans deep. Always there, always ready. In coastal communities from Maine to the Carolinas, from Portugal to the fishing villages of Japan, sardines were a staple for centuries. Families ate them right out of the tin, mashed on crackers with raw onion and a splash of vinegar, or stirred into rice with a squeeze of lemon. They were the cheapest protein you could buy, and fishermen's wives fed them to their families 4 or 5 times a week without thinking twice about it. A single can contains roughly 1.4 grams of combined EPA and DHA, more than most fish oil supplements. In a whole food form, your body absorbs far more efficiently. But here's what makes sardines special for anyone taking a statin. Statins block an enzyme called HMG-CoA reductase that makes cholesterol but also makes coenzyme Q10. When you take a statin, your CoQ10 drops. And CoQ10 is essential for energy production in every cell, especially your heart muscle. That muscle pain, fatigue, and brain fog statin users complain about, much of it traces back to CoQ10 depletion. Sardines help replenish it. Eat one tin 3 to 4 times a week, packed in olive oil, not soybean oil, on whole grain toast with lemon and red onion. The fifth food is raw garlic. Not garlic powder, not roasted garlic. Raw garlic, crushed and left to sit for 10 minutes. When you crush a garlic clove, an enzyme called alliinase converts alliin into allicin. Allicin is a potent vasodilator that relaxes blood vessels and lowers blood pressure. It inhibits platelet aggregation and has been shown to reduce total and LDL cholesterol while raising HDL. But allicin is fragile. If you heat garlic immediately after cutting, the enzyme is destroyed before allicin forms. Your grandmother probably crushed her garlic with the flat of a knife and let it sit while she prepared everything else. She did it by instinct. The science caught up 70 years later. Every day, crush 1 to 2 cloves, wait 10 minutes, then eat them raw mixed into honey, or add them at the very end of cooking. If you're still with me, think about this. Everything I've mentioned so far, your grandmother had access to all of it. The cheapest, most ordinary foods in her kitchen. No supplement store, no health food aisle, just the garden, the butcher, the pantry, and the stove. And her generation had a fraction of the heart disease we have today. Let me know in the comments what your grandmother cooked on Sunday mornings. The sixth food is fermented vegetables, specifically raw sauerkraut. Not the canned, pasteurized kind, the kind that's still bubbling slightly when you open the jar. Depression-era families adopted it because cabbage was pennies and salt was all you needed. The fermentation creates lactobacillus bacteria, some of the most beneficial probiotics for your cardiovascular system. When your gut microbiome is out of balance, bacteria produce trimethylamine, which your liver converts to TMAO. TMAO directly accelerates atherosclerosis. A healthy microbiome, built by eating fermented foods regularly, reduces TMAO production significantly. 2 to 3 tablespoons of raw sauerkraut daily, eaten with a meal, unheated. Look for it in the refrigerated section, not the shelf-stable aisle. The seventh food genuinely surprised me in my research. Walnuts. Raw, unroasted, unsalted walnuts. Amish families and rural communities in Pennsylvania kept walnut trees as a food source, cracking them by hand in the fall. Walnuts are the only major tree nut with significant alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3. But they also contain polyphenols, particularly elagitannins, that directly reduce the oxidation of LDL. Remember, it's not the LDL that's dangerous, it's the oxidized LDL. A study from the Hospital Clinic of Barcelona followed over 700 older adults and found that adding about a half cup of walnuts daily significantly reduced LDL and the concentration of small, dense LDL particles. Eat 14 halves daily, about 1 ounce. Add them to your oats, eat them as a snack, toss them into salads. Just skip the roasted, honey-glazed kind. The eighth food is apple cider vinegar. Let me be clear, it's not a miracle cure. It won't melt belly fat overnight. But it does one thing for your cardiovascular health that's well supported. It improves your glucose response after meals. When you eat carbohydrates, your blood sugar spikes, triggering insulin. Repeated spikes lead to insulin resistance, which drives up triglycerides, raises small dense LDL, and lowers HDL. Acetic acid, the active compound in apple cider vinegar, slows sugar absorption by interfering with starch-digesting enzymes. Research from Arizona State University found that 2 tablespoons before a carb-heavy meal reduced post-meal blood sugar spikes by up to 34%. Take 1 tablespoon of raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar diluted in a full glass of water 10 to 15 minutes before your largest meal. Never drink it straight. If you have acid reflux or stomach ulcers, talk to your doctor first. Number 9 is cinnamon, but not the common cassia cinnamon that contains high levels of coumarin. I mean Ceylon cinnamon, true cinnamon. It improves insulin sensitivity and contains cinnamaldehyde, which has direct anti-inflammatory effects on the endothelial cells lining your blood vessels. When those cells are inflamed, that's when LDL particles start burrowing into the arterial wall. Half a teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon daily, on your oats, in your coffee, in a smoothie. Check the label. If it just says cinnamon, it's almost always cassia. Look for Ceylon or Cinnamomum verum. Number 10 is going to sound old-fashioned, and that's exactly why it works. Liver, beef liver or chicken liver, prepared the way farm families across America made it for generations. Sliced thin, maybe dredged in just a little flour with salt and pepper, and pan-fried with thick rings of onion in real butter until the onions were golden and sweet and caramelized, and the liver was just barely pink in the middle. The smell of liver and onions cooking was the smell of a working kitchen, a kitchen where nothing went to waste and every part of the animal was honored. Most people under 50 have never eaten liver in their lives, and that's a nutritional tragedy because liver is the single most nutrient-dense food in the entire human diet. One serving of beef liver contains over 1,000% of your daily B12, which is essential for keeping homocysteine in check. Elevated homocysteine directly damages arterial lining and is arguably more important as a risk factor than cholesterol, yet it's almost never tested on a standard blood panel. Liver also contains massive amounts of vitamin A, iron, folate, and copper. Buy fresh grass-fed liver, soak it in milk for an hour, cook it quickly with caramelized onions, once a week. If you can't handle the taste, grate frozen liver into ground beef for meatloaf or burgers. Pay close attention to 11 because the food industry has worked very hard to make you forget this one. Full-fat dairy, full-fat yogurt, real aged cheese, and honest-to-goodness butter from grass-fed cows. The kind of butter that's deep yellow, almost orange, that spreads on warm bread and melts into a golden pool. For decades, we were told that saturated fat from dairy clogs arteries and sends your cholesterol through the roof, so a whole generation threw out the butter their grandmothers had cooked with and replaced it with margarine, a factory-made product one molecule away from plastic. They poured skim milk into their coffee and ate fat-free yogurt that tasted like sweetened chalk. And what happened? Heart disease rates kept climbing. A major study in The Lancet followed over 135,000 people across 21 countries and found that higher dairy fat intake was associated with lower cardiovascular disease risk. Full-fat dairy contains vitamin K2, which directs calcium out of your arteries and into your bones. It contains conjugated linoleic acid with anti-inflammatory properties, and the fat improves absorption of vitamins A, D, E, and K. Switch to whole milk yogurt, use real butter, eat a couple ounces of aged cheese several times a week. The 12th and final food ties everything together, and if you only make one change after watching this video, make it this one. Extra virgin olive oil. Not the stuff in a clear plastic bottle for $3 that's been sitting under fluorescent lights for who knows how long. Real extra virgin olive oil comes in a dark glass bottle. It has a harvest date on the label, and when you taste it, really taste it, you feel a peppery bite at the back of your throat that almost makes you cough. That cough, believe it or not, is a sign of quality. It means the polyphenols are intact. Mediterranean families have used olive oil as their primary cooking fat for thousands of years. In the regions where people live the longest, the so-called blue zones in Sardinia, Icaria, and southern Spain, olive oil isn't a condiment. It's the foundation of every meal. The pre-dimed study followed over 7,400 people at high cardiovascular risk and found that a Mediterranean diet with extra virgin olive oil reduced major cardiovascular events by 30%. 30%. Its polyphenols, particularly oleocanthal and hydroxytyrosol, reduce LDL oxidation. Its monounsaturated fats improve endothelial function. Use at least 2 tablespoons daily, drizzled on salads, vegetables, eggs, bread. For high-heat cooking, use avocado oil instead, but get your olive oil in cold or warm applications where the polyphenols are preserved. Now let me tell you about a woman named Dorothy. Dorothy is 71 years old. She taught 4th grade for 32 years in a small town outside of Columbus, Ohio. She retired 5 years ago and was looking forward to gardening, spending time with her grandchildren, and finally reading all those books she'd been stacking on her nightstand. 3 years ago, she went in for her annual physical. Her doctor looked at her blood work and frowned. Total cholesterol 267, LDL 174, triglycerides 210. He wrote a prescription for 40 milligrams of atorvastatin and told her she'd probably be on it for the rest of her life. Dorothy filled the prescription that afternoon because she trusts her doctor, and she should. But within 2 months, things started changing. She got muscle cramps in her calves so bad they woke her up at 2 in the morning, gasping. During the day, she felt foggy, like she was thinking through wet cotton. She forgot words. She lost her train of thought mid-sentence, something that had never happened to her in 32 years of standing in front of a classroom. She told her doctor, and he said that's sometimes a side effect, but the medication was important. Dorothy didn't stop her statin. She's not reckless, but she started making changes alongside it. Steel-cut oats with walnuts and cinnamon every morning, bone broth every Sunday, sardines twice a week, garlic crushed into her evening meals, real butter instead of margarine, olive oil instead of canola, 2 eggs every morning, apple cider vinegar before dinner. 6 months later, Dorothy went back for blood work. She sat in the exam room, nervous, not sure anything had changed. Her doctor came in, looked at the paper, and then looked at her. Total cholesterol 212, LDL 128, triglycerides 141. He actually smiled. He reduced her statin dose from 40 milligrams to 10. Within weeks, the muscle cramps were gone. The brain fog lifted. She told me she was reading 2 books a week again and had planted the biggest vegetable garden of her life. Dorothy didn't cure anything. She didn't reject modern medicine. She gave her body the raw materials it had been missing for decades, the same things her own grandmother used to cook without thinking twice, and her doctor made the adjustments. That's how it's supposed to work. Now, I need to say something important. If you are taking a statin, a blood pressure medication, a blood thinner like warfarin, or any other prescription, do not stop or reduce it based on this video. Some of these foods, particularly garlic, omega-3 rich fish, and fermented foods, can interact with medications. Garlic has mild blood thinning properties. Omega-3s can enhance anticoagulant effects. Vitamin K in fermented foods can interfere with warfarin. These interactions are manageable but need to be managed by your doctor. Print this list, take it to your next appointment, and say, "I want to add these foods. Can we monitor my levels?" Any good doctor will say yes. Here's what I want you to take away from today. Every one of these 12 foods does the same fundamental work. They calm inflammation. They reduce LDL oxidation. They improve the flexibility of your arterial walls. They support your liver, your gut, and your metabolic machinery. They don't fight cholesterol. They fix the environment that makes cholesterol dangerous. Your grandmother didn't know the word endothelial. She didn't know about beta-glucan or allicin or oleocanthal. But she knew that when you ate real food, cooked slowly, from the ground and the garden and the animal, people stayed well. The science is finally catching up to what her hands already understood. Here's your plan starting today. First, tomorrow morning, make steel-cut oats with cinnamon and walnuts. 1 meal, 3 items covered. Second, this weekend, buy marrow bones and start a batch of bone broth. 5 minutes of prep and the slow cooker does the rest. Third, add sardines to your lunch twice this week. Fourth, replace your cooking oil with extra virgin olive oil for everything that doesn't need high heat. Fifth, crush a couple of garlic cloves tonight, let them sit 10 minutes, and add them to dinner. 5 steps, all doable today or tomorrow, no prescription needed. In my next video, I'm going to show you the 7 warning signs that your liver is struggling to process cholesterol properly. Signs that show up years before your numbers get flagged on a blood test. Some are visible on your skin, on your nails, even in the way you sleep. If you've ever woken up between 1 and 3 in the morning for no apparent reason, you're going to want to see that video. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. I'll see you there.